Thank you. Thank you very much, Rabbi Epstein. Thank you. Thank you. So, for the first presentation that I'll be doing at this retreat, which is this one, we're going to be doing something different. We're actually going to learn together. We're going to take a part of the Torah, part of the Bible, and we're going to look into it and try to understand it. It's a story perhaps you're familiar with, whether you've had a Hebrew school education, a day school education, the yeshiva education. You've heard of this story, and perhaps it has puzzled you. You see, we've been given this gift, the gift of the Torah. The Torah has the 5 books of Moses. It has the books of the prophets. We have the sacred writings. We have the Mishnah. We have the Talmud. We have the rabbinic responsa. All of it to guide us and to teach us and to show us the way through life. Now, the very word Torah means horah, teachings, a guide. And often people are surprised when they first start studying the Torah because there's the expectation. You've heard that we have 613 commandments, and there's this expectation that when you open the book, you're going to start reading commandment 1, commandment 2, commandment 3, and instead, what do you get? You get stories. You get a series of stories. In fact, the entire book of Genesis doesn't have laws. It's all stories. We have a lot of characters in the Bible. They're real characters. But one can ask the question, why are we reading a storybook? Shouldn't it get right into laws? And the answer is that these characters of the Bible teach us by their way of living, by their lifestyle, how to live and at times how not to live. Stories talk to us. Stories talk to our soul. Stories talk to our heart. Stories have a way of penetrating. A book of laws can be boring. A book of stories capture us. And if each and every single story is meant to teach us something, then we need to take some time, and that's why this course is called Biblical Reflections, to look into the stories and to reflect on the stories. What is going on? Now, I have found in my teachings of Torah, I've been doing this Wednesday afternoon study group, except we're off for a few weeks right now. It's interesting that the time, it's always 12:30 California time, and we're very about close, and it's a Wednesday. So this is my time to teach Chumash. I've been doing it now for some 30 years, every Wednesday afternoon. We started from the beginning, Bereshis Bara, and we haven't finished the Torah yet. We're in the book of Deuteronomy. We're making our way rather slowly. Now, what I'm going to try to do today, and I know at some point Rabbi Epstein is going to come in with that 5-minute sign and I'm going to panic. I'm going to try to take about 6 weeks of material and pack it into this 45-minute slot that I've been given. So I'm going to be going quicker than I normally would. The story that I've selected to share with you it's about Isaac, it's about Jacob, it's about Rebekah, it's about Esav. I want to set the scene for you, okay? After the binding of Isaac, Abraham's main focus becomes Isaac has to get married. I almost lost him. He's got to get married. And he sends his servant Eliezer to his relatives in Haran to find a wife for Isaac. And through divine intervention, it becomes clear who God has selected for Isaac to marry Rebekah. She becomes the second matriarch of the Jewish people. And they're married for years without children. After intense prayers, Rebekah becomes pregnant. But the Torah tells us that it was a very difficult pregnancy. And the Medrash adds that it was also a confusing pregnancy. If you have the booklets, and although the booklets did not give us by each verse the actual text number, I'll just read through it. And these are the descendants of Isaac, son of Abraham. This comes from the book of Genesis, chapter 25. The descendants of Isaac, son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rivkah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramite of Paddan Aram, sister of Laban, the Aramite, for a wife. Isaac prays before God a cross opposite his wife, for she was barren, and God grants his prayers, and his wife, Rebekah, conceives. Here's the difficulty in the pregnancy. The children clashed. They pressed inside her. And when this happened, she said, if this is so, why did I desire this? She then went to inquire to ask for instruction from before God. She has this difficult pregnancy. She doesn't know that she's pregnant with twins. And the Medrash tells us this strange story. The story goes that when she would pass a place of idol worship, she would feel kicking as if one of the children want to come out. Again, she doesn't know it's two children. Then she passes a place of study. She passes where her father is, where her husband is. And he's involved in study. And again, there's kicking. The child wants to come out, and she's confused. Hey, do you want to be this religious guy and go to the house of study? Or do you want to be this idol worshiper and jump out where there's idol worshiping going on? She's confused. Now, it's a separate story because we can get into the question of free choice. How is it possible that a child within the womb is already kicking to get out if we're supposed to have free choice? And free choice, does free choice happen during the time of the womb? That's another next year at the JLI retreat, wherever they decide to be. So she goes to inquire, and she goes to a prophet of God. And she says, I'm very confused. I have a lot of pain in this pregnancy. There's a lot of kicking going on. And I'm confused. And the prophet explains to her, if we go further in the text over here, Hashem says to her through the prophet, 2 nations are in your womb. You're not carrying 1 child, you're carrying 2. And 2 kingdoms will separate from within you. One government will be mightier than the other, but the greater one will serve the smaller one. When their days of pregnancy were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first one came out with reddish complexion, covered completely with what was like a hairy robe, and they named him Esav. And his brother came out, his hand grasping the heel of Esav, and Isaac names him Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rivkah gave birth to them. The lads grew up. Esav became a skilled trapper. He was a hunter, a man of the field. Jacob was a wholesome man living in tents, serving in the house of study. Critical verse coming up. Isaac loves Esav because he ate of his hunting, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So it's given over to her, this prophecy, and it's a personal communication between God and her. Something not for her to share, something for her to keep. It's a personal prophecy that there's going to be 2 nations coming forth from this pregnancy. And in this prophecy, she's told that the older will serve the younger. Keep this in mind. We have this prophecy, we have this pregnancy. Rebekah knows there's going to be a rivalry between these twins, and she knows that the older will serve the younger. In one verse, the Torah in this story drops a lot of hints. It tells you that Esav was a hunter and Jacob was a man of the tents. Those are code words. What do I mean by code words? When the Torah has already told us that there were hunters before, remember the story of Cain and Abel? Cain was a hunter. The Torah is already setting a personality for us. That when one's a hunter, there's an aggressive personality. When one is one that sits intense, there's a more spiritual personality. So the Torah is already telling us, as these children are growing up, they're already exemplifying, they're putting on display their personalities. The verse tells us that Isaac loved Esav, the hunter, because he hunted for him. He brought him food. He fed him. Now, although we have our stories with Esav, and we know he's not one of the characters of the Bible that we are to look up to and admire, nevertheless, the Talmud does tell you that when it came to respect for his father, Esav was from the greatest that ever existed, that he really did have respect for his father. The Talmud says, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said, all my life I served my father, but I didn't reach 1/100th of the level of honor that Esav showed his father Isaac. So it's real. But there's also a play on words going on in this story in the Torah. He was a hunter. He hunted with his mouth too. He was able to fool his father. Parents at times don't want to know the truth, so they allow themselves to be fooled. They would rather not know. And so if you put on the show, I'll buy it because I want to buy it. And Esav loved being loved by his father. He loved that more than anything else. That his father loved him meant the world to him. But then the verse tells us that Rebekah, Isaac's wife, second matriarch of the Jewish people, loved Jacob. She wasn't blinded by it. She saw reality. She was saddened by her son Esav's behavior. But more than that, she was troubled by how her husband was being fooled by him. Keep in mind, she had the prophecy. She already knows what's going to happen. And then we get some snapshots. Snapshot tells us that Esau got married. Now we know that the Abraham family don't marry Canaanites. They stay within the family. The Torah tells us that Esau broke from that and married a Hittite woman, and that it brought a lot of pain to her parents. He knew they didn't want him to marry her, but he did it nevertheless. And then we get this other strange story, the sale of the birthright. Let's take a look at that. There's a bottom verse on page 3, if you're following along with me. Okay, they're growing up a little bit. Yaakov was simmering a pottage when Esau came in from the field exhausted. According to tradition, this was the day of Abraham's funeral. Esau says to Jacob, please give me to swallow of this red pottage. Like he opens his mouth, feed me some of the stew that you're making, for I'm exhausted. He was therefore named Edom, red, because the food was red. Jacob says, as this day, sell your birthright to me. Let's make a deal. I'll give you of the cooking that I'm making. You give me the rights to be the firstborn. You remember he came out a few seconds before Jacob. That makes Esau the firstborn. Let's make a deal, okay? I'll give you the pottage. You give me the rights to the firstborn. Esau says, I'm going to die anyway. What good is this birthright to me? I'm a hunter. We don't live too much long. We don't have long lives. I'm a wild man. I don't need this birthright. And Yaakov says, so swear to me like this day. He swore to him and sold the birthright to Jacob. Jacob then gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils. He ate and he drank, and he got up and left. Thus Esau scorned the birthright. In Hebrew, Vayivez Esau es habachora. Those words are put in by the author of the Torah. The narrator, who is God, telling the story, puts in his own comment over here. I took that, God says, the author says, as despising, disrespecting the role of the birthright. The role of the birthright was a spiritual role. Who would represent the family and the offerings that were going to be brought? And Esau laughs at it, saying, you think I'm interested in that spiritual stuff? That's not for me. Says the author, that was despising the birthright. Okay, keep this in mind. There's no respect from Esau for anything spiritual or holy. He despised what it represented. He mocks the whole concept of there being the spiritual mission. I'm a hunter. This is my life. This is where I belong. Now this brings us to the story I want to focus on. That's the background. You're familiar with the story of the blessings. For the story of the blessings, we have to fast forward. Isaac is old, and he's blind. And he feels his days are numbered. And before he dies, he wants to give over blessings. And he wants to give the blessings to whom? To the son that he loves, to the firstborn, to Esau. And Rebekah, his wife, overhears this, and she goes into action, and she tells her son Jacob, we got to do something. How many of you know of the story? Raise your hand. Okay. That's just in very brief. Let's read through the story in the text we have. I'm going to go through this at a very rapid pace. Again, this would normally be something I would dissect each verse as we go through it. We don't have the time for it, but you'll get the gist of the story from the text. I'm going to read it to you from my translation, but it'll be pretty similar to what you have in your books. I'm going to do the whole chapter 27 now. It came to pass when Isaac was old, his eyes were too dim to see, that he called Esau, his older son, and he said, my son. And he said to him, here I am. And he said, behold, now I have grown old. I do not know the day of my death. So now sharpen your implements, your sword, and take your bow, and go forth in the field and hunt game for me. And make for me tasty foods as I like, and bring them to me, and I will eat, in order that my soul will bless you before I die. So go out there, hunt some food, prepare a meal for me, bring it in, I'll eat, and after the meal, I will give you the blessings before I die. Rebekah overheard when Isaac spoke to Esau his son, and Esau went to the field to hunt game to bring it. And Rebekah said to Jacob her son, behold, I have heard your father speaking to Esau your brother, saying, bring me game and make me tasty foods, and I will eat, and I will bless you before the Lord before my death. And now, my son, hearken to my voice, to what I'm commanding you. Go now to the flock. Take from me there 2 choice kids, and I will make them tasty foods for your father as he likes. I know how to cook for him too. Esau's not the only one that can cook for him. I'll cook for him. And you shall bring them to your father that he may eat, in order that he bless you before his death. And Jacob says to Rebekah, his mother, behold, my brother is Esau, a hairy man, whereas I'm a smooth man. You want me to go in and disguise myself as Esau? Yeah, maybe he's blind, but he's going to figure this out. He's going to touch me. He's going to hug me. He's going to kiss me. He's going to feel me. I don't feel like Esav. Perhaps my father will touch me, and I will appear to him as a deceiver, and I'll bring upon myself a curse and not a blessing. And his mother said to him, on me is your curse, my son. Only hearken to my voice and go and take them from me. So he went and he took and he brought them to his mother. And his mother made tasty foods as his father liked. And Rebekah took the costly garments of Esav, her eldest son, which were with her in the house. And she dressed Jacob, her younger son. And the hides of the kid she put on his hands and on the smoothness of his neck, so he would feel hairy. And she gave the tasty foods and the bread that she had made into the hands of Jacob, her son. And he came to his father. And he says, my father. And he said, here I am. Who are you, my son? And Jacob says to his father, I am Esav, your firstborn. I have done as you have spoken to me. Please rise, sit down, and eat of my game so that your soul will bless me. And Isaac says to his son, how is it that you found it so quickly, my son? I know how much time it takes you to do this. You're back so fast. How'd you do it so fast? And he says, because the Lord your God prepared it before me. That's not a good answer. Why? Because Esav doesn't talk that way. God did this for me. Esav doesn't talk with God language. Isaac says to Jacob, please come closer so that I may feel you, my son, whether you're really my son Esav or not. That line threw him off. Is this really you? So Jacob draws near to Isaac, his father, and he felt him. And he said, the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esav. Powerful line. And he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like the hands of his brother Esav, and he blessed him. And he said, are you indeed my son Esav? And he said, I am. And he said, serve to me that I may eat of the game of my son so that my soul will bless you. And he served him and he ate and he brought him wine and he drank. And his father Isaac said to him, please come closer and kiss me, my son. And he came closer and he kissed him. And he smelled the fragrance of his garments and he blessed him. And he said, behold, the fragrance of my son is like the fragrance of a field which the Lord had blessed. And may the Lord give you of the dew of the heavens and of the fatness of the earth, and an abundance of grain and wine. Nations shall serve you, and kingdoms shall bow down to you. You shall be a master over your brothers, and your mother's son shall bow down to you. Those who curse you shall be cursed, and those who bless you shall be blessed. He gives these blessings over to him, thinking that it's Esav. And it came to pass when Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, and it came to pass Jacob had just left his father's Isaac's presence, that his brother Esav comes in from the hunt. It's literally like one of these movies where one guy walks out the door and the other guy comes in from the other door. And he too made tasty foods, and he brought them to his father, and he said to his father, let my father arise and eat of the game of his son so that your soul will bless me. And his father Isaac says to him, who are you? And he said, I am your son, your firstborn Esav. And Isaac shuddered a great shudder. I want you to remember this verse for later. And he said, who then is the one who hunted game and brought it to me? And I ate of everything while you had not yet come, and I blessed him. What are the next words? He too shall be blessed. When Esav heard his father's words, he cried out a great and bitter cry, and he said to his father, bless me too, O my father. And he said, your brother came with cunning and took your blessings. Too late, your brother got him. And he said, is it for this reason that he was named Jacob? For he has deceived me now twice. He took my birthright, referring to the pottage from years earlier, from decades earlier, and behold, now he's taken my blessings. And he said, have you not reserved a blessing for me? And Isaac answered and said to Esav, behold, I made him a master over you. And I gave all his brothers as servants, and I have sustained him with corn and wine. So for you then, what shall I do, my son? And Esav says to his father, have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father. And Esav raised his voice and wept. And his father Isaac answered and said to him, behold, your dwelling place shall be the fat places of the earth and of the dew of the heavens from above. And you shall live by your sword, and you shall serve your brother. And it will be when you grieve that you will break his yoke off your neck. And Esav hated Jacob because of the blessings that his father had blessed him. And Esav said to himself, let the days of mourning for my father draw near. I will then kill my brother Jacob. And Rebekah was told of the words of Esav, her eldest son, and she sent and called Jacob, her youngest son, and she said to him, behold, your brother Esav regrets his relationship to you and wishes to kill you. Yeah, thank you very much, Mom. And now, my son, hearken to my voice and arise, flee to my brother Lavan, go to Haran, and you shall dwell with him for a few days until your brother's wrath has subsided, until your brother's rage subsides from you and he forgets what you did to him, and I will send and bring you from there. Why shall I be bereft of both of you on one day? And Rebekah says to Isaac, I am disgusted with my life because of the daughters of Ches. I don't like the girls that live in this town. If Jacob was to take a wife of the daughters of Ches like these from the daughters of the land, of what use is life to me? Let's stop there. Anyone baffled by this story? Anyone troubled by this story? This is Jacob. This is our patriarch. He's lying to his father. He's getting blessings by deceiving him. And what's going on here? Why does Isaac want to bless Esau? See, there are 4 characters that we need to dissect in the short amount of time that we have. There really is 5 characters. I'll leave the 5th character. I'm not sure we're going to have time. We'll focus right now on 4 characters, and perhaps when I'm finished, if someone reminds me to answer the question, who's the 5th character, we'll get to that. Isaac, Jacob, Esau, and Rebekah. We need to understand these 4 characters of our story. How are we to understand each of them? And perhaps if we dissect each one separately, we'll begin to see the story in an entirely new light. What I'm about to share you is something that when I taught this story for the very first time, I was baffled by these questions. I was disturbed by these questions. And I set out to try it. There's got to be something more. Something that you don't learn in the traditional text. Something else is going on here. So here's the discoveries I've made. Let's first look into Isaac. Question on Isaac. I get that you like your firstborn son Esau, but why do you want to give him the blessings? I mean, you clearly know one's a spiritual son, one's a hunter. I mean, the choices are so clear. You may love Esau, it doesn't mean you want him to take over. What is Isaac thinking about saying, I want to give these blessings to Esau? Why? And so what's always misunderstood is that Isaac had never had the intention of making Esau the next patriarch of the Jewish people. Proof, if you look at the blessings that he gave to the individual in front of him who he thinks it's Esau, there's nothing spiritual mentioned. They're all material blessings. They're about wealth, they're about power. There's nothing spiritual there. So he's giving over material blessings, but still, why would he give it over to Esau? If you're Isaac, this is what you're thinking. God gave me twins, and they're not the same. They're different personalities. Why would God do this? He starts trying to think the purpose for these twins, and he comes up with an idea that really does make sense. And if we start believing that this is what's going through Isaac's mind throughout his life, we begin to understand the story in a different light. If God gave me twins, it's so that one should support the other. Jacob will be the spiritual one. He will be the next patriarch of the Jewish people. He will be that light unto the nations. He will be the father of the chosen people. That's his role. But to be a light unto the nations and to be a chosen people in a dangerous world, you need protection. You need strength. That's not Isaac's thing. He's not a strong man. He's a guy that sits in tents all day. For that I've been given another son, Esau. Esau will protect Jacob. Esau will say to the world, you mess with my brother, you're messing with me. And so what does he want to do before he leaves this world is give Esau all the blessings he can possibly give him for wealth and strength and power. Why? Because he's going to protect Jacob. Throughout all of history, Jacob is going to need this protection, and Esau is going to be that protector. So I want to give him blessings. That's what he has in mind, the strength of the partnership that he has envisioned all his life. Now it's coming close as he thinks to the end of his life. He wants to make sure it happens. It makes rational sense then why Isaac wants to bless Esau. Jacob will take care of with the spiritual blessings, but the material blessings, this guy who will be the protector of the Jewish people for all eternity, he needs it. It sounds good, and it makes sense. The only problem was that Esau wasn't interested in being the protector of Jacob. And Esau would have used that power to abuse Jacob and exile Jacob. And we never would have had a fighting chance in this world of being a light unto the nations. Because Isaac did not know of the wickedness of Esau. He knew he was kind of secular, he was out there, he was a strong man, he was a hunter, but he didn't know his son had an evil streak to him. Let's talk about Esau now. What's confusing to us about Esau? Why does he care? We read the first story where the author of the Bible tells us he despised the birthright, right? He mocks it. He makes fun of it. Why suddenly in the chapter of the birthright is he break down crying? Dad, you have to give me some blessings, please, please. And he breaks down crying to the point that his father has compassion on him and gives him a blessing, which costs us terribly throughout history. Why does Esau suddenly care? Number one, because the egotistical individual doesn't like to be outsmarted. He doesn't like to be tricked by his brother. But secondly, when he gets wind that these blessings are not spiritual blessings, but they're material blessings, and they're blessings of wealth and power, now you're talking my language. You see, Jacob, when you were with your pottage there, with your lentils over there, talking about the role of the birthright and bringing offerings, I have no interest in that. But now Dad wants to give over blessings of power. That's my field. That comes into my territory. Who do you think you are coming into the room and taking what belongs to me? That's Esau. Now I want to take on Jacob. Jacob, I believe, is the target of most first-time readers of this story. Most first-time readers of the story feel that Jacob did something wrong. Most first-time readers of the Bible look at Jacob in this particular chapter and question his ethics, his morals, his behavior, and his honesty. Jacob is supposed to be the patriarch that represents emes, truth. And the contradiction seems to be so there in this chapter that he did not speak truthful to his father. He is scorned and questioned the most from all the characters of this particular story. And I say to you, he is the most innocent of all four characters. Leave him alone. Get your hands off him. And if you look closely at the verse, you see this. He is told by his mother, you must listen to me. That's what she says to him. Not please listen to me, you must listen to me. I am using my authority as your mother to dictate the decision. You have no say here. I am taking away your free choice. And yet he objects. He says, I can't do this, Mom. And she overrides the objection. And she says, this is not about you, this is about me. You're worried that this is going to bring a curse? It's on my shoulders, my son. You will do what I ask you to do. She takes the curse on her shoulders. If again you look closely at the text, you will see as the text describes the story, it has Rebekah taking the action. She puts the food into his hand. He wouldn't even pick up the tray. She puts it and she dresses him. He's an adult, he's not a baby, and the Torah tells us she dressed him. Why? Because he did not want to do this. In every possible way, the author of the story is telling you that he is a participant here against his will. You know, sometimes in court you have a witness that is clear, that is, I don't know the right words, any a lawyer here. He doesn't want to be here. Jacob doesn't want to be here, and he's made it clear to us. And he remains himself in front of his father. When he talks to his father about God, God made it quick for me today. He's still being himself. He talks like Jacob. He won't disguise himself as Esau when it comes to his speech. Now, yes, he has to say the answer. Are you Esau? He has to say yes, otherwise he violates his mother's conditions, his mother's commandment to him. And let's also keep in mind that of these characters, Jacob will suffer the consequences of this story more than anyone else. He will pay dearly for this. The hatred of Esau forces him to run away, and he's exiled not for a few days like Rebekah says to him, but for 20 years with a character just as bad as Esau. So leave Jacob alone. He's very innocent. Which brings me to the main character. You know, by the Academy Awards, there is the best actor and actress, and then there's the supporting role. In this story, there is one main character. It's Rebecca. Rebecca is the hero of the story. She's the mastermind of the story. This is a story about Rebecca. It's not a story as much as you think about Isaac. It's not a story about Esau. It's not even a story about Jacob. It's a story about Rebecca. Let's understand what's going on here. Whenever you're involved in doing something where you're trying to fool someone, you want to have a plan that you can actually get away with it. Even in worst case scenario, okay? She loves Jacob so much, and she wants him to get the blessings. What result could she be thinking would come from this very silly plan? The plan makes no sense. Because the clock is ticking, and at some point that door opens, and at some point Esau walks in. It's going to be discovered. You can't get away with it. And Jacob is right when he says, you're going to bring a curse here, not a blessing. She must have realized this. She's a bright woman. Certainly Isaac is going to find out. And he's going to be angry at Jacob and angry at Rebekah. When you're fooling someone, your goal is to get away with it. There is zero chance of success. Zero. There is no chance of success. Unless she hires a hitman to go after her own son so he never comes back, which we know Rebekah wouldn't do. But so long as Esau is on his way with food and a tray of food to come to his father, you're going to get caught. Furthermore, she's a spiritual woman. She's one of the matriarchs. If so, she understands the whole concept of blessings, the source of blessings. This is not about Isaac taking a gold watch and saying, here, my son, here is a gift. Here's a ring. Here's some gold. This is about blessings. Blessings are spiritual. May God grant you. That's what a bracha is. It's asking of God that you give. So even if she's able to fool her blind husband, you can't fool God. God knows who's standing there. Why would God go along with trickery? Why would God go along with deceit? If she thought that this was going to be a legal transaction, in the Torah laws, there's something called a mekach ta'os. A mekach ta'os means a deal that is made, but its foundation is false. You present yourself as John Smith, and you make a deal, but you're really not John Smith. You signed the name John Smith, but you're not that person. If it's all based on something that's false, there is no transaction, and the transaction is undone. So let's suppose that when Isaac gives over the blessings to Jacob, there's a real transaction. The moment Isaac finds out that the person in front of me lied to me, deceived me, masqueraded as Esau, but is not Esau, boom, the deal is off. It's canceled. So what good is this whole arrangement that Isaac is going to give over blessings to your son Jacob thinking that it's Esau, when in a matter of minutes it's going to be withdrawn. It's going to be taken away. The discovery of the masquerade was unavoidable. You follow me here? Rebekah's plan makes no sense. So I understand Isaac, I understand Jacob, I even understand Esau, but Rebekah baffles me. What was she thinking? And this is where I present to you that I think we totally misunderstood the story. And what leads me to believe that what I'm about to present to you is the real understanding of what this story is about, is the reaction of Isaac when he finds out the truth. Put yourself in his shoes. The son just lied to you. What are you going to say to him? The first time you see him, you're going to say, why did you lie to me? I'm surprised, I'm disappointed. You're going to make some mention of it. You would expect anger, you would expect disappointment. How could you? Why did you? There is nothing of that. What does he say to him? Next chapter, real quick. Chapter 28. This is taking place. This is the first time that he sees his son after this episode is over. Isaac calls Jacob, and what does he do? Read those words. It's page 13. He blessed him. He commanded him and said to him, do not marry a woman of the daughters of Canaan. Set out and go to Padan Aram in the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and marry one of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May the Almighty bless you, make you fruitful, and multiply you. May you become an assembly of people. May he give you the blessings of Abraham to you and your descendants with you, that you may inherit the land of your dwelling which God gave to Abraham. That's not what you say to a son that just lied to you. The very first time that he encounters his son after this story, there is no questioning him. Why did you do this? You see, what I believe is that the intention of Rebekah was not to get away with it. Her intention was for her masquerade to be discovered. She wanted to get caught. The whole plan was about getting caught. Why? We've been told that Esau despised the birthright. We've been told that he married women unbecoming the Abraham family. We've been told that he was not living a life that would make his parents proud. And yet, even after the Torah tells us all of this, the Torah tells you Isaac loved Esau and wanted to give him blessings. After everything already. We laid out the case why it's Jacob, not Esau. And yet, Isaac still wants to go ahead with it. And then the Torah tells us his eyes were weak and he could not see. Key words. He could not see. He was blinded. He was blinded by his love for his firstborn, blinded by his dream of the partnership of the brothers. Rebekah wasn't blinded. Now, certainly, husband and wife over the decades had numerous conversations about their kids. And Rebekah must have made her case over and over to Isaac that Esau was fooling him. And Isaac would say, I can't be fooled like that. I know he's a hunter, I know all that, but he's a good boy. He knows his boys. And try as she may, she could not convince him that he was being deceived. And now with seconds ticking away, what can she do to stop what's about to happen? What can she do to convince Isaac that you're making a mistake, Isaac? She has a plan. It would be a daring plan, perhaps a dangerous plan, but she only has minutes and she only has one chance at this. She wants to prove to Isaac how easy deception was and how easy it was for him to be deceived. She wants to prove to him that you can be fooled. If an honest Jacob can fool you to think he's an Esau, what do you think Esau has been doing to you all these years? She's opening his eyes instead of having a debate. She's proving herself. I'm going to show you how easy it is to deceive you. And in Isaac's undeception, through the deception, she succeeds perfectly. You see, this story is about this marriage debate between Isaac and Rebekah. And Rebekah finds a way to get her message across in this most powerful way that gets Isaac's attention and gets his understanding. One of the texts that we studied, verse 33, it said that when Esau came into the room and says, here I am with the food, and he says, I don't understand who you were just here. The verse says that Isaac felt charada gedola ad ma'od. Those are the Hebrew words. Those are odd words. Charada gedola ad ma'od was tremendous trembling. His body started to shake. Now, I can understand the words, he was surprised, he was shocked, he was confused. But it tells us no, he started trembling tremendously. And Rashi, the classic commentator, tells us that at that very moment, he felt the gates of hell opening up. He went through this tremendous, tremendous trembling because he felt Gehenna. He felt hell. Why? That was the moment of awakening. That was the moment that he realized that what Rebecca has been saying to him for decades has been true. That was the moment of awakening, realizing that his son was not who he thought he was. And what does he say right afterwards? He says, Gam Baruch Yiyeh. Now that I know who it was that was before me, that it was Jacob and it wasn't Esau, and those blessings that I gave minutes earlier were given under false pretense, I want to make it clear to you, Esau, and to the world forever, for all eternity, for those studying this text years later at a JLI retreat, that I am hereby giving them over to him with the knowledge of who it was. That's where the blessings get really transferred. Not earlier when he thought it was Esau, but right now when I know the truth. I know the whole truth. I know my wife, Rebecca, has been right all along, and I should have always listened to her. At this point, I am making it clear, Gam Baruch Yiyeh, the blessings will go to him. Not what we would have expected him to say. I cancel it with the first guy. I'm giving it now to you because you're the guy I wanted to give it to. Why doesn't he say that? Because the deception of Rebecca worked to capture his attention, to make him understand, to make him realize that all along Esau was not who he thought he was. So he won't take it back. He won't claim mekachtos. He won't claim that this was under false pretense. He won't curse him. He won't even admonish him because he knows Jacob and he knows his wife was behind all of this. She made him do it. There is no way Jacob would have done this. He gets it. And he knows that God was part of the whole ruse, which is character number 5. You see, there's a 5th character here. Who arranged all of this? Who had it that there were going to be twins? Who had it that there was going to be that he was going to get blind? Who had it? Think about the timing of here, the timing that goes on. Rebecca has to overhear a conversation taking place between Isaac and Esau. She has to act quickly. The clock is ticking. Literally, he's going to go out, Esau, and cook. If he finishes 2 minutes earlier and he walks in while this is going on, what would take place? The director, the producer here of the story, is behind the scenes. For whatever reason, God wanted to have that there will be a rivalry between these two sons. That Jacob and Esau will have this rivalry through history until the days of Mashiach will come, when there will be peace between the sons. It is brought down that Esau will come to the house, to the mountain of Jacob, and will say to the people of Jacob, to us, show us the way to the Lord. When Jacob was disguised as Esau, Rome, was when Jacob was disguised as Esau and he was standing before him, it says that he felt the presence of God. That Jacob felt the presence of God. Remember, he's confused at first, Isaac. Remember, he says, who are you? Come closer, let me touch you, because you sound like Jacob. So why not stop right there and say, hey, something's fishy here. Esau doesn't sound that way. Esau doesn't talk that way. You sound like Jacob. And he goes ahead and blesses him. Why? Because he felt the presence of God. He felt it was the right thing to do. And when Esau is there, he feels hell opened up before him. It gets even clearer for Jacob for Isaac, when in Esau's in Esav's protest, he says, and this is not the first time he did it to me. What do you mean it's not the first time? Well, years earlier, I sold him the rights to the birthright. Oh, little fact that no one ever told me about. Now, Esav will plead, and Esav will cry, and Esav will beg. And at first, Isaac will resist. And then Isaac will give him limited blessings. Quite prophetic statements. Dwell in the fat of the land, but you're going to live by the sword. And when you serve your brother, things will be well with you. But when they, the Jewish people, falter and they're thrown into exile, you'll have the upper hand over them. And that's the reference to Rome destroying the second Beis Hamikdash. The text will tell us later that Esav in his heart plots to kill his brother. The verse says, Yikruvu yemei avel avi v'aharga. I'm going to wait for my father to die. And as soon as he goes, because he said he's close to his death, it's just going to be a few days, I'm going to murder my brother. He still doesn't want to upset his father, so he'll wait a few days for him to die. And Rebecca hears this plan, this plot, and she's got to protect Jacob. Now, she could walk in to Isaac and say, you see, I was right. He wants to kill Jacob. This is going to be another Cain and Abel story here. She could score such good points in this argument by simply saying, this is the guy you wanted to bless, a murderer, a one who wants to murder our son. That's the one you wanted to give blessings to. But she doesn't do that. She got what she needed. Isaac understands. Isaac conceded. It's time to back up. So what does she say? Katzti b'chayai, there's no nice girls here for him to marry. Let's send him out of the country so he can find a shidduch over there. He can go to my family and find, it turns out, 4 women from there. And he can get married and he can start a family. And so Isaac will now call Jacob back, and as we pointed out, no admonition. But what does he give him? Birchas Avraham. He gives him what he always intended on giving over to Jacob, and that's the spiritual blessings. He appoints him as the next patriarch of the Jewish people. The transition begins right then and there. Now that wouldn't happen, that transition wouldn't happen if what really took place here was deception, if Jacob lied to his father. Isaac understands there was no lie by Jacob here. There was respect for his mother. And his mother merely showed Isaac in a very, very delicate manner how wrong he was, and allows Isaac to correct it by giving the blessings, both the material and the spiritual, over to Jacob. There you have the story of the birthright. Hope you enjoyed.